Welcome back to the Celtics Nation Rise account. I'm Griffin Aldridge. Alongside of me is Seamus Zarlingo, and we have some breaking news. Jrue Holiday has been traded to the Portland Trailblazers for Anfernee Simons and two second-round picks. It is currently 3:24 for me, 2:24 for Seamus while we are recording this, and not 3 in the afternoon, 3 in the morning. This is our second recording on this, but Seamus, we were on live too for this reaction, so technically third recording of this, and it's crazy. It's crazy, Seamus. But what are your thoughts on this? Our brains are a little willy wonky, so sorry in advance.
Well, yes, we we were live talking about the NBA Finals. We were talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder. We were talking about how you looked like Tyler Hero and Baylor Shireman, and I was talking about the draft. This started out seriously. This night started out by I was just talking about the draft, third overall pick, the Sixers. What are they going to do, or how far is Ace Bailey going to drop? And then all of a sudden, we're doing an emergency broadcast about Jrue Holiday being sent to the team he's already technically
Ben on.
not played for, but I mean he's been on the roster for a couple days or a week or so in the Portland Trailblazers. And let's flash this tweet up here for everybody. The news from Sham Sharania breaking: the Boston Celtics have traded Jrue Holiday to the Portland Trailblazers for Anfernee Simons and two second-round picks. The Celtics finally moving Jrue Holiday. We thought it may happen during this offseason. Finally happens tonight. Maybe a little earlier than people expected. Maybe people expected it to be on draft night or beyond draft night, but it comes before draft night. Just what, uh, 40, about 48 hours until the draft. I mean, basically to the time in which it came during the evening, about 48 hours until the draft, the Jrue Holiday trade comes through. And immediately my initial reaction on this is, wow, the Celtics, they always in Celtics history, in my time covering the Celtics, I have to say they always strike deals in which makes sense, right? Other franchises, sometimes they come away with deals and you go, when they come away from the deal, you go, what exactly was the direction? What's the why do they need to do this deal? One that comes to mind is what the Chicago Bulls got back for Zach Levine midway through the season at the deadline. I mean, they basically, I mean, it was, the SpongeBob meme with a paper clip and a rope. It's like, here you go. Here you go. With the Chicago Bulls, like, what? This trade makes no sense. I can't make any sense of it. Yet every single Celtics trade you can make sense of. I mean, the Celtics front office, and it goes beyond Brad Stevens. We always think, Brad Stevens, and Whit Grosbeck as the owner over time. And right
Now
now
Bill Chisholm.
we're
Now Bill.
we're in the Bill Chisholm era. This is the first trade of the Bill Chisholm era. Just saying out there. I know we have Wick, who's still in charge technically, but we don't know how that's going on behind the scenes. We already talked about that months ago on how that could all roll out. But ultimately, this trade, it's another symbolic move that says the Celtics front office and their brain trust, elite amongst the NBA. And I'm not saying right off the bat that this is going to be just a home run trade in which brings another title to the Celtics. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying here is the Celtics, they made a trade that made sense to themselves. Number one, Jrue Holiday, all of the reasons in which you wanted to get rid of Jrue Holiday. Let's just go through them real quick because we touched on it during the Trade Destination Live with Jrue Holiday, but I'll reiterate all these points. Jrue Holiday regressed in 24-25. I mean, he had his lowest points per game total since his rookie year. His 3-point percentage decreased by 7.6%. It did. And not only that, the 3-point percentage, 7.6%, that's a huge drop in 3-point percentage in one season. He went from being an elite 3-point shooter to being slightly below league average. Jrue Holiday did. But his field goal percentage dropped, his points per game dropped, his rebounds per game dropped, his assists per games dropped, his blocks per game dropped. by 50%. His minutes per game dropped. So everything dropped for Jrue Holiday in his age 34 season. And when you see that type of decline out of a guard who's 34, you know, oh, this is likely not going to get any better going into age 35, 36, 37. And ultimately, with the guaranteed future money in which Holiday was owed over the next 3 seasons, it made Holiday a contract and a player in which the Celtics I mean, they definitely prioritized getting off Holiday this offseason, as we see with this trade tonight. But the next 3 seasons, $32.4 million for Holiday next year in 24-25. In 26-27, he's owed $34.8 million, and then 27-28, he's owed 37.2. And that 27-28 is what I really want to point out here. He's 37 years old that season, making $37.2 million. Jrue Holiday, that contract could get a little rough over time for the Celtics and hamper the Celtics' ability to actually build on to the Brown and Tatum led Celtics and the era in which Brown and Tatum is trying to lead the Celtics to more championships in. So that guaranteed future money, the Celtics get off that in this deal. Anfernee Simons only under a $27 million contract for next season. I believe it's $27.7 million next season. It's an expiring deal for Anfernee Simons. But furthermore, the competitive stage and where the Celtics are within the luxury tax, that played a huge factor in the Celtics moving off of Jrue Holiday. Uh, the luxury tax for the Celtics, they're $20 million over the second apron. And right now it's I don't believe the Celtics are looking to entirely get under the luxury tax in this offseason. I think it's very possible they look to get under the luxury tax line during the season if it's there at the trade deadline. But I think they're going to try to get themselves under at least the second apron. And the second apron comes with a lot of stipulations in which prevents teams from moving and maneuvering throughout the league. So I believe the Celtics are going to try to get under that second apron for sure this offseason. And they're $20 million away. They were $20 million away going into the offseason. Well, this trade now cuts $5 million off that $20 million. Now it's a $15 million mark in which the Celtics need to diminish from their salary books. And yeah, Porzingis, $30.7 million. If you trade Porzingis for a $15 million player, still still a very good productive player, you cut the remaining 15 and you don't even have to move Sam Hauser. Or you move Sam Hauser, now you only have 5 left, and now you're talking about the world of Tillman and all, everybody in
Yeah.
that salary range. So ultimately, the Celtics, the competitive stage and the luxury tax and everything, competitive stage with Tatum, talked about it a million times too with Tatum, how his Achilles injury just changed the entire offseason for the Celtics and their outlook on the future. There could have been conversations of, oh, maybe Jrue Holiday, keep him around in the future if Tatum's actually here next year, but he's not going to be on court. Tatum's not going to be on court. And by the time Tatum comes back, Jrue Holiday is going to be 36. And that window, and this is for me one of the biggest aspects of this entire Anfernee Simons and Jrue Holiday trade. The window for when Jrue Holiday if or when Tatum comes back in the lineup, right? With Jrue Holiday as a main contributor or a starter, a top contract within the rotation, the window was very short. Okay, it was always going to be very short because Jrue Holiday is going to be 36 when Tatum comes back, and if the Celtics don't win the title that year, then he's going to be 37. And by that time, are you thinking, Jrue Holiday is going to be a solidified starter in the NBA at that point? Might be an albatross contract. At that point, he might be a bench veteran. We don't know with Jrue Holiday. He regressed this season, and we don't know how far the regression is going to go. And we don't know if he's going to be on the Blazers or whoever else in the coming weeks here. But a huge aspect of this trade is the fact the Celtics receive Anfernee Simons, who's 26 years old. 26 years old,
Crazy.
and gives the Celtics a little bit different of a look than they're used to the last couple of seasons. He's more of an isolation scoring guard. Um, does have some great playmaking skills, has shown to be a pretty good playmaker in the NBA, but he's more of an isolation scorer and a 3-point shooter. We're going to see a little bit more attack out of Anfernee Simons than we did from Jrue Holiday. And Simons, he's way more of an offensive oriented player than a defensive oriented player. As Jrue Holiday, he was kind of flip flopped. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife. He was our top defender, but then on the
Totally.
offensive end, he would always just be on the right in the right spots. Now we're going to see Anfernee Simons, potentially a defensive liability. I tend to think if you're coming from a bad situation into a good situation, there's a little bit more motivation there to defend and up that game. I will say the physicality with him. He's only 6'3", so that could play a little bit of a role in the fact he's not that great of a defender. But offensively, Anfernee Simons is going to be able to score the ball within the Celtics offense, handle the ball, and take some pressure off of Jaylen Brown next year. For when Jaylen Brown is inevitably that top guy, it's going to be Jaylen Brown and Anfernee Simons next year. It's crazy that we go from Brown and Tatum to Brown and Simons. We got to get used to that. But that's what the Celtics are looking at right now, and they just turned a 35-year-old Jrue Holiday into a 26-year-old Anfernee Simons. And Anfernee Simons, he's already played 7 years in the NBA, yet he just turned 26 this month. So that's a huge aspect of this deal for me because looking at the age as it goes up, so by 29-30, right? And we talked about this a little on the live, but by 29-30, when Jrue Holiday is 39 years old, Anfernee Simons will only be 30. So by 29-30, that NBA season, Anfernee Simons will be only 30 years old, in which is younger than Derek White right now. Derek White, I believe Derek White, he's 31, correct? Let me confirm this for everyone. Derek White is 30. He'll be 31 on July 2nd, folks. I had to wait for that one. So Derek White will be 31 on July 2nd. And Anfernee Simons going into the 29-30 season. It's the 25-26 season. Going into the 29-30 season, Anfernee Simons will be younger than Derek White is right now. Meanwhile, Jrue Holiday will be older than Al Horford is right now. So think about that. Think about that type of asset overturn for the Celtics. The Celtics just turned a 35-year-old guard into a 26-year-old guard. And yes, there might be some efficiency concerns going from Holiday to Simons, but Holiday showed regression and he's owed $37 million 3 seasons down the line when he's age 37. This was maybe the last opportunity in which the Celtics could actually get to trade Holiday. They get off future money. They control their destiny with Anfernee Simons. They can sign him to an extension. They can wait till free agency. They can basically trot him out there for a 1 year tryout. That's kind of how I see it next season. Like, oh, it's a 1 year trial. Let's see how it goes and see what kind of salary number he makes in the 2026 offseason. This was a trade and 2 second round picks too. The Celtics, just throw on 2 second round picks under the asset pile. It's not nothing when you get those picks. It's like it's the little tiny picks in the margins over time that can make a difference. So this trade for the Celtics, it's a trade where I look at it and go, wow, okay, well, they definitely did something that made sense. It impressed me. And they always do. The Celtics front office always finds a way to win. This trade, I don't see how it's not you're getting off of Jrue Holiday's future money when this is a proactive move with Jrue Holiday instead of a reactive move with Jrue Holiday. And that's where the Celtics are in this offseason with not only Holiday, but guys like Porzingis, even Sam Hauser. I know their salary numbers, but it's also their play on court as well, and actually the players they are. So this trade at the end of it, I gotta say, I would, we've talked a lot about it, but I'm excited for what the Celtics could potentially roll out on floor next season. And I think this gives the Celtics a lot of flexibility in what they want to do going ahead into the future with Brown and Tatum. Sad to see Holiday go, a very vital piece of the 2024 title team, but hey, he's a champion with the Celtics. No one can ever take that away from him. And in Boston, he'll always be appreciated. So thank you, Jrue Holiday, for the time with the Boston Celtics. However, Anfernee Simons, welcome on into Boston and get ready because this next era, it's going to be a climb for the C's.
Oh, what hands down, Seamus, it's going to be a climb for the seas. You could say that again and again and again. I will say I think we're both still in a state of shock. I mean, we just found this out. Like, geez, we were on the live, like you said, talking about how I look like either Baylor Shireman or Tyler Hero, but I think I need to pull up this image that I made really quick. I mean, Brad Stevens cooked. I mean, you always look at Brad Stevens and he chefs it up. More like Chef Stevens, not Chef Curry. So, Brad Stevens cooked this one up. So we'll start off on the Jrue Holiday side before I get into Anfernee Simons. But Jrue Holiday, just incredible player. And I said this earlier on the CTW live. Go check that out. Go hear all our initial thoughts with Franco and everything about that. But I have to say, when we are talking about that, you're getting a player in Jrue Holiday where in Boston he was not the first option, not the second option, not the third option, not the fourth, not the fifth, maybe the sixth, maybe the seventh, maybe even as good as the eighth option to score on the Boston Celtics. And you know he's more than capable to score. You saw it in Milwaukee. You saw his numbers. He was the second or third option in Milwaukee. But here in Boston, his game was pass first, shoot the corner three when it came to you, and on top of that, play defense. That was his main role. Now he's going to Portland. You could kind of get back some of that old Milwaukee feeling, But I'm going to pull up. Am I good, do you think, to pull up an ESPN? Yeah, I think I am. Some ESPN stats.
What do you, what? I mean,
Well,
well,
we're pulling
yeah,
it up.
go ahead. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
fine.
we're pulling it up. Jrue Holiday last year, and it's
Already with the logo.
I
Quick.
that's what I was saying already with the Trailblazers logo. So this is what you're getting for Jrue Holiday. So last year with the Boston Celtics, now Portland Trailblazers. Sorry, it's been a long night. Average 11.1 points per game, 4.3 rebounds per game, 3.9 assists per game, and shot 44.3% from the field goal. And was an NBA champion with the Boston Celtics in 2 years of service. So you look at that, one Celtics Nation Rise MVP, too, as we see that at the bottom scrolling by right now, tied for seventh. So NBA champion with Boston, and the Boston Celtics do not win that championship without Jrue Holiday. He was that missing puzzle piece, and you look at that, and you look at the value he added to the team. And Seamus, you already mentioned it, originally traded from the Trailblazers to the Boston Celtics in a package for Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, and some first. Now traded back to the Trailblazers for Anfernee Simons. Oh, it's been a long night. Anfernee Simons and 2 second-round picks. Now, this is what Boston's getting in return. Boston is getting a young player who, as you already mentioned, is at the age of 26 and already from last year averaged 19.3 points per game, 2.7 rebounds per game, 4.8 assists per game, and shot 42.6% from the field goal. Incredible numbers from him. And you just look at the comparison really quick. I'm going to pull up Jrue Holiday stats again. 11.1 points compared to 19.3. And you already see that Celtic screen behind him. And I'm excited to see that. And Seamus, I don't know about you, but I'm just ecstatic to see that already because this is a young player. This is a good move for the Boston Celtics. And again, you see him in that Celtic screen wearing the number 88 right there in Amias Queta, and you see that Celtics Nation Rise MVP leaderboard scrolling down on the bottom, and I'm sure Simons is going to have so many Celtics Nation Rise MVPs next year with the absence of Jason Tatum. Definitely a lot more than one for sure. I could pretty much guarantee that one. So ultimately, I think this was a big move for the Boston Celtics. And again, I'm going to pull this one up. This got to be a famous one. Brad Stevens really cooked with this one. And you look at this trade, and Seamus, what are your obviously, we talk about it, and people are going to say, well, Boston, this was a steal, but was it really a steal? What can this really give for the Trailblazers. You're getting a veteran that could really teach a lot of the younger players. You're a very young team over there in Portland, and this could give a lot of room for Scoot Henderson to develop there and become the main guy, and Jrue Holiday could be more so a mentor for him and teach him hit the ways in Portland. So, do you think this was a steal for the Celtics? I think ultimately the Celtics did win this trade. However, the Trailblazers still got a player that, you look at the stats and numbers. Obviously, Simon's numbers look a lot better, but Jrue Holiday could produce a lot for you on the defensive side of the ball, and he could give a lot of leadership to your younger players. But what are your thoughts along those lines, Seamus?
Well, first of all, I'll go into that take when we get on to Simons. But the Blazers, right? I'm trying to figure out if they're really trying to compete next year or if this is some kind of crazy game of asset accumulation because every single move they've made up to this point, their team is last year it just seemed like a random again, a random pool of assets with a couple of young guys littered in between. And we're going, well, what's exactly the direction here? The Blazers, like they looks like they're fun, looks like they're young, but what's going on here? They had an overachieving season in which propelled confidence out there, and in which the Blazers maybe next year we're going to compete for a playing spot. I think that's very realistic, a playing spot, but maybe even a playing playoff spot at their height. But you look at the team next year on the payroll. I wonder this team is pretty deep, but it's like how do all these pieces really mesh together? Your top three contracts next year: DeAndre Ayton, Jeremy Grant, Jrue Holiday. So at the top, those are guys that, in my mind, it's like, are those are all kind of bad contracts. All of them, like they're every like think about it. Grant, Ayton, and Holiday, they're all overpaid
But
for
but
what
can I,
they actually do
Seamus,
on the floor. They're all overpaid. They're all
totally,
overpaid.
but can I say those three names that you just mentioned are not bad names. Like DeAndre Ayton is a great center, and he could bring a
But
lot for a
they're
team.
way they're like
How,
DeAndre Ayton though. At the end of the day, like your performance, like, oh well, if you don't perform up to your contract number, well, that's a problem for team building. Just
oh,
in
totally.
winning it because it's about the pursuit of a championship and building your team out
Now,
and having the most depth essentially at the end of the day and having the most the most talented team. And when you have DeAndre Ayton making 35.5, he you would rather have Gafford on your roster for 18 million than DeAndre Ayton for
tot-
35.5.
totally. But
100%.
can we
But I
say
will say center, forward, guard. Okay, top three contract. You got that going for you if you're the Blazers. So it's not like you have say with the Suns, your top three contracts or your with the Suns, the top three contracts there, you have Jalen Green, you have Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. All three play the same position. They're all,
yeah,
ball dominant scoring guards. They're all redundant to each other. Phoenix has got a mess on their hands there. Meanwhile, here you do have a nice mix at the top there with your contracts. And I'll say this is a time period where you can afford those contracts if you're the Blazers because all your young guys, they're not paid. Scoot Henderson still only making $10.8 million or $10.7 million. Shaden Sharp, he's on the last year of his deal. He's making $8.4 million. Klingon is making $7.2 million. Chris Murray is making $3.1 million. Kamara down at the bottom of the roster, he's making an unguaranteed $2.2 million. I mean, that's the base of your young core right there. Kamara, Chris Murray, Klingon, Sharp, and Henderson. 10, 10.7, 8.4, 7.2, 3.1, and 2.2. Those are really small deals. And then on top of that, you have, Matisse Thybulle, 11.5, Robert Williams, see what type of production he can give the Blazers. But he's at 13.3. And Avdia, I think he's one of the better contracts in the league at 14, and it's a descending contract as well. Avdia in 2 seasons from now is making $11.9 million dollars. This year he's making, however, though, 14.4. So that's a descending deal. That's a great deal for the Blazers. So they have some the Blazers, look at they have a bunch of young guys they're not paying yet, overpriced contracts at the top of the roster, but like you said, good players, right? So when you're not paying your young guys, you can use that space to maybe overpay a little bit to get some good players in the building, period, as teams need from time to time, all the time. And then you have some intermediate contracts in here. Avdia, Williams, Time Lord, Robert Williams, of course. Got to specify the Williams. There's a million of them in the NBA. But Avdia, Robert Williams, and Matisse Thybulle, those three players right there, they're good intermediate contracts. And the Blazers, I think they might send this and compete as much as they possibly can next season. There might be more moves on the way for the Blazers, no doubt. Just from the standpoint of they certainly have movable assets in which teams might want this offseason. But looking at the team and looking at the entire roster, it's a fairly balanced roster. You have DeAndre Ayton, Klingon, Robert Williams as your three centers, essentially. Your forward rotation, it's Jeremy Grant, Avdia. You have Matisse Thybulle is kind of that guard forward combo, more of a forward in my mind. Chris Murray, Kamara, those guys. And then your guard rotation, it's going to be Holiday, Henderson, and Shaden Sharp. I mean, that's a pretty balanced roster as it
Oh,
is. And then you
totally.
have Duop Reith and Ryan Rupert in there as well. I don't know if we want to mention them as rotation guys or not, but that's not a terrible roster. Like the young guys, I don't. What they're hoping for, in my mind, is to develop like Houston and to develop
Mhm.
potentially more so like Houston, but maybe like San Antonio as well in terms of the asset pool, right? But Houston is the outlook here because what Houston did, Houston has a bunch of young guys that aren't making any money yet, right? And who do they pay? Oh, they paid Dylan Brooks and Fred Van Vliet, and everybody went, "Oh my goodness, those deals are awful." Well, guess what? It's June 23rd, 2025. Actually, it's June 24th now. One day away. Happy NBA draft eve, everybody, by the way. But June 24th, 2025, the Houston Rockets no longer obligated to either Dylan Brooks or Fred Van Vliet. As of a couple hours ago, the Houston Rockets declined Fred Van Vliet's option, his $44 million team option at the back end of his deal. They declined that. And then, of course, they just traded away Dylan Brooks in a deal for Kevin Durant. So the Rockets, they signed those two players. And what do? Oh, right. They make the Rockets competitive the last 2 seasons, actually bring them into the spotlight and bring them into the room of teams that actually have a chance in the Western Conference, and people actually think, oh, they're going to go maybe they're not just a bottom feeder team, right? And so Dylan Brooks and Fred Van Vliet add the culture into the Houston Rockets organization, and but yet the initial thought is, oh, overpay for both of those guys. This is a ridiculous move, but the Rockets aren't obligated to either of them now. They've used one of them to go out and get Kevin Durant. They use the other one for salary space. They might actually retain Fred Van later on down the line. But the point is here, the Rockets overpaid on a couple of veteran culture building players, guys who they knew they could rely on to be durable, play out there and play specific roles. They were proven players in Toronto and Memphis from before and proven playoff players at that. They joined the Rockets. The Dylan Brooks and Fred Van Vliet, they both signed with the Rockets back in 2023. 2023? Yeah, 2023. And that right there is the example of where the Blazers might be standing with Jrue Holiday is the Blazers have all these young guys like the Rockets did back then. All these like, oh, we might have some potential here. But then the Rockets start adding on veteran pieces to kind of uplift those young guys. And even the Pistons. The Pistons are a great example of that as well. There's Duran, there's Ron Holland, Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham there. Unfortunately, Jaden Ivey hurt halfway through the season,
Well,
but still a very good young guy. But the Pistons bring in Malik Beasley, Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr. They come into the rotation. They build a culture. They're proven veteran guys, veteran players. Now the Blazers, they're almost on that same track. You hear all these young names for the Portland Trailblazers, in which I just named out with all the small contracts. But yet at the top, you have Jrue Holiday, definitive veteran you know is going to fill a specific role. You have Jeremy Grant, a definitive veteran which you know is going to play a specific role. He's been in the Portland organization for a couple of years now. And then you have DeAndre Ayton, been there in the playoffs, made the finals. I've been back and forth on DeAndre Ayton before, but he's not in my mind, he's not one of those veteran names in which I'm talking about here. He just has a big contract and he is a younger player. He has made the NBA finals. He's been in the league since 2018. So he technically is a veteran player. I mean, let's face it, he's been in the league for what, 6, 7 years now.
mhm.
But just 35 million. That's a pretty big overpay for DeAndre Ayton, I will say. And I just DeAndre Ayton, I don't know if the personality, maturity, I don't know if he's that veteran in the locker room necessarily. I don't know about
Um, I
DeAndre Ayton as that
I
guy.
don't think so.
But the
But Jrue
Blazers, the
Holiday,
outlook of the Blazers is like the Rockets and the Pistons right now. Is you add that veteran talent in, you balance your roster out. The roster balance is important too. The versatility is important. Not saying Portland's going to be the best team in the West next season or anything like that, or get up to the 2 seed, but they they do have a balanced roster. They do have a balanced roster. They do also have that veteran presence. They have the young guy presence, and we forget young guys. They get better year after year. It's not they're not going to stay static and stay the same as they did last year. They're going to get better year after year, and I think Portland has a pretty good chance to compete for a play-in spot, if not a playoff spot next year in the Western Conference. With this roster as it stands right now, it could end up being an underwhelming roster as the season gets going, just because of the competitive landscape of the West. But I think it's going to be a roster in which actually has expectations of somewhat competing throughout this NBA season. I think the Blazers are, Chauncey Billups as head coach. I think they're trying to tilt their trajectory up, right? Again, the Pistons and the Rockets, that's the outlook of the Blazers and what they are trying to do with their roster right now. And I think they've achieved the good first steps, the right first steps in doing that. Whether that actually succeeds or not, we'll have to uh, we'll have to whether that can succeed or not, the season will bear that out. But right now, I will say the Blazers, they're at least on the right track to competing again. Will it be next season for a title? Absolutely not. But these are the kind of moves that you look at in time and go, oh, the Blazers, they trade away Simons for Holiday, but Holiday, he was that needed veteran presence on the roster. He balanced the roster, and even more so, maybe he actually boosts his value in Portland, and the Trailblazers flip him for something else at the deadline, or that'd be a little soon, but maybe next offseason. Maybe I'm just saying this too. Jrue Holiday might not even be on the Blazers next year. He might get
no.
rerouted again from the Blazers
Oh,
elsewhere. You never know. Imagine like Jrue Holiday in a Lakers jersey or something. I mean, of that nature. It'd be all. I don't know why I had to mention that. I just, I don't know. Like that was so, but no,
it's
something
late.
like that where you go, what? Like, wait, what? He's rerouted and he's playing here now. That's
No,
the possibility.
but Seamus, I have to say, I love your take about the Pistons roster, and I was gonna say that as well. I think this looks like a Pistons type team. You talked about getting Malik Beasley and stuff like that. Now bringing in Jrue Holiday, that veteran presence with some young talent. I think they could kind of have a Pistons look. However, it is a stacked Western Conference, but I think they could still be like a Pistons team. And I think they're gonna have that nittiness, that grit, and just they're gonna be eager. And Jrue Holiday is a competitive player, and that being on competitive teams, winning a championship with the Milwaukee Bucks and the Boston Celtics, he's gonna want to be competitive, and you're gonna see a different version of Jrue Holiday that you haven't seen in Boston, because I think he's gonna have more leadway with the ball, and I think he's gonna get more opportunities to be more of a scorer in Portland. Obviously, you have other young talent around him as well. But I do have to say at the same time, I feel for Jrue Holiday. I mean, he signed this contract with Boston, wanting to finish his career in Boston, now getting rerouted back to the Portland Trailblazers, who originally traded for him, in that trade for Damian Lillard. And you look at that, and now you see he's back with them. So it's kind of interesting because I remember us seeing this graphic. At least I seen this graphic, when he was traded to the Boston Celtics. And that's actually the first time I was introduced to Celtics Talk Weekly, because I saw you guys talking about that and seeing that whole trade go down. However, now we have Anfernee Simons on our team. And I tell you what, it looks good to see that Boston green behind him. But I think, Seamus, that's gonna wrap it up until, look, it's 4 in the morning right
Woo!
now. We're not even lying right now. Four in the
Wait,
morning.
yeah. Let's see. We got
Four. Look, we got
There you go. Central time, baby. Central time.
4 in the morning right now. Three for Seamus. I think we need to wrap this up. We don't know what picks
Get
it
another
is.
hour of sleep than Griffin. Nice.
I know, lucky duck, lucky duck.
For real.
Yeah, we don't know what picks it is, so we will fill you guys in with that. We will probably fill you guys in with that when we do the draft episode. But again, we'll end off on these. Anfernee Simons to the Boston Celtics. Jrue Holiday, thank you for your service. Forever will be a part of Celtics history, and we will always cherish Jrue Holiday in a Celtics uniform. But with that being said, Seamus, I think it's time to hit the hay. That is going to do it, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment down below. We will see you guys later on today for the draft episode. Thank you, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe. Peace, guys.